On the night of November 28, 1953, a man named Frank Olson fell from a 10th floor window of a New York City hotel. The government called it a suicide. His family believed it for more than 20 years. But Frank Olson hadn't simply broken down. Days earlier, a colleague had secretly slipped a powerful hallucinogen into his drink, without his knowledge and without his consent. Frank Olson was an unwitting test subject in the most disturbing experiment the United States ever ran on its own people. This is the story of Project MKUltra. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're opening a file the CIA tried to destroy. For 2 decades, the agency searched for something that sounds like science fiction, a way to control the human mind. They spent millions. They experimented on prisoners, patients, soldiers, and ordinary citizens who never agreed to take part. And when it was over, they shredded the evidence. This is what survived. To understand MKUltra, you have to understand the fear. It's the early 1950s. The Cold War is hardening. Across the world, communism appears to be advancing. And in Washington, intelligence officials become convinced of a terrifying idea, that their enemies have unlocked the secret to controlling the human mind. The fear wasn't pulled from nothing. During the Korean War, captured American soldiers appeared on camera confessing to crimes they almost certainly never committed, denouncing their own country in flat, robotic voices. To American officials, there seemed to be only one explanation. The enemy had learned how to wash a man's brain. The word entered the language that very decade: brainwashing. The CIA decided it could not afford to fall behind. If mind control was possible, America had to master it first. And so, in April 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles formally approved a program to find the keys to the human mind. Its code name was MKUltra. To run it, Dulles chose a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Quiet, brilliant, and almost invisible to the outside world, Gottlieb would later be called the agency's poisoner-in-chief. He was handed something almost no one in government ever receives: a nearly unlimited budget and almost no oversight. Whatever he wanted to try, he could try. And what Gottlieb wanted was scale. Using front organizations, fake foundations designed to hide the agency's hand, the CIA funneled money into more than 80 institutions, prestigious universities, hospitals, prisons. Most of the doctors and researchers cashing those checks had no idea where the money truly came from, or what it was really for. The experiments touched on hypnosis, sleep deprivation, electroshock, and a long list of drugs. But one substance captured Gottlieb's imagination above all others: a new, astonishingly powerful chemical called LSD. In tiny doses, LSD could unravel a person's sense of reality. To Gottlieb, that raised an electric question. Could it break down a person's will? Could it pull secrets from a spy, or make someone obey? There was only one way the CIA believed it could find out. They had to give it to people and watch. Which brings us back to Frank Olson. Olson was a U.S. Army scientist who worked closely with the CIA. At a quiet retreat in rural Maryland, Gottlieb spiked the group's drinks with LSD, telling the men only after they'd already swallowed it. Most recovered. Frank Olson did not. In the days that followed, Olson spiraled into severe distress. The agency brought him to New York, supposedly for help. Instead, on that November night, he went out the window. His family was told he'd suffered a breakdown. The truth, that he'd been dosed in a secret CIA experiment, stayed buried for over 20 years. And Olson was not an isolated case. He was the beginning. By the mid-1950s, the program had expanded into something even darker. In a sub-project grimly nicknamed Operation Midnight Climax, the CIA set up secret safe houses in San Francisco and New York. These weren't labs. They were disguised as ordinary apartments, even brothels. The operation was overseen by a federal narcotics agent named George Hunter White. The setup was simple and appalling. Women were paid to bring men back to the safe houses. The men's drinks were secretly laced with LSD, and then, from behind a two-way mirror, agents watched to see what the drug would do. The men never knew they were part of a government experiment. There was almost no oversight, and the agents knew it. Years later, George White wrote a chilling line about his time on the project, describing it as a place where a man could lie, cheat, and steal with the full blessing of his government. To him, it had been, in his own words, fun, fun, fun. For the people on the other side of that mirror, it was something else entirely. They had been turned into test subjects in their own country, by their own government, without ever being asked. So after all of this, the money, the drugs, the ruined lives, what did MKUltra actually achieve? The uncomfortable answer is almost nothing. By 1960, even Gottlieb's own assessment concluded that the results were too unpredictable to be useful. There was no reliable truth serum, no mind control switch. The drug that was supposed to unlock the human mind mostly just produced chaos. The experiments were scaled back through the 1960s, and the program formally ended in 1973. But its ending is almost as disturbing as its existence. By the early 1970s, the Watergate scandal had Americans questioning everything their government did in secret. The CIA director at the time, Richard Helms, understood exactly how explosive MKUltra would be if it ever surfaced. So he gave an order: destroy the files. Nearly the entire paper trail of 2 decades of human experimentation was deliberately burned. Gottlieb himself oversaw the purge. As far as the CIA was concerned, MKUltra would simply cease to have ever happened. But secrets this large rarely stay buried. In 1974, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh published a bombshell on the front page of the New York Times, exposing illegal domestic spying by the CIA. The dam broke. Washington was forced to investigate its own intelligence agency. 2 investigations led the charge: the Rockefeller Commission and a Senate committee led by Senator Frank Church. Piece by piece, they began to drag MKUltra into the light. They learned of the safe houses, the LSD, and the deaths, including that of Frank Olson, whose family finally discovered how he had really died. Sidney Gottlieb was tracked down and called to testify. By then he had retired and was living quietly. He appeared in secret, under an alias, with a guarantee of legal immunity. The man who had run America's war on the mind would never be prosecuted for any of it. And the destroyed files? It turned out the purge wasn't perfect. In 1977, a Freedom of Information request by author John Marks turned up roughly 20,000 documents, financial records that had been misfiled in the wrong storage depot and missed by the shredders. That accidental survival is the reason we know as much as we do. Everything else is ash. The fallout reshaped the rules. President Gerald Ford issued an executive order banning experiments on human subjects without their informed consent. Congressional oversight of the intelligence community was tightened. The era of a CIA that answered to no one was, at least on paper, over. But MKUltra's shadow is long. Its methods echoed in later interrogation programs. Its story fueled a deep and lasting distrust of government secrecy that survives to this day. And its central question, how far a state will go against its own people in the name of security, has never really gone away. Frank Olson's family spent decades searching for the truth. Most of MKUltra's victims never even knew they were victims. And somewhere, in 20,000 pages that were never meant to survive, the rest of the story is still waiting. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because next time, we're opening another file the world was never supposed to see. Until then, keep asking questions. The answers are usually classified.